Hey, this is Dan from UserSpice.com, and I thought I would do something a little bit different today. I thought that I would go through the process of making a plugin, and instead of just basically me acting like the developer of UserSpice, I thought that I would kind of work through some of these problems as you would work through them if you were developing your own plugins. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a plugin that allows us to log every single page view that somebody makes on your project. And we're also going to record all of their post data, all of their get data, and it's going to be a very heavy user tracking slash logging program. And you could use this either for full user tracking or for debugging, like trying to figure out what's going on with your code, stuff like that. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to add some features that I probably wouldn't bother adding if I was just releasing this to the public, because I want to give you an idea of how to use the various features that are available in UserSpice. So this is going to be a longer video. I'm not going to hurry through it. I'd rather not even break it up into multiple parts. We'll see how it goes. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Spice Shaker, and I've already put my key in, and I'm going to download one called Demo, and I'm going to install the Demo plugin, and we don't even really need to go much beyond that. Then I'm going to go to my code editor, and I'm going to go to plugins, and you can see Demo showed up here. And the folder that you use for your plugin is going to be a unique keyword to your plugin. In other words, if you make one, you can't go out there and make another plugin called Demo and have it be compatible with UserSpice. These are all unique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this folder, and I'm going to call mine Super Logger. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is instead of having my entire project open in my code editor, I'm going to open up just that one folder. So give me a second here. I'm going to go to User C Plugins. I know you can't see this. And I'm going to open up just Superlogger in my code editor. So now I have this. Now why am I doing this? I'm doing this because there's going to be a lot of finding and replacing, and I want to make sure that I'm sticking to just this plugin that we created. So I'm going to do a find in project, and I'm going to make this case sensitive. And the first thing I want to do is I want to look for capital DEMO because that's the name of the plugin. So I want to go ahead and replace that everywhere. And I'm going to go Super Logger like this. So I'm going to find that there aren't going to be many of them, but I'm going to find them all. And I am going to replace all. In fact, somebody just pinged me on Discord saying it'd be really cool if I made a plugin like this. So hey, UserSpice, there you go. I'm making your plugin. So we've done that. We've got Demo, and now we're going to do lowercase Demo, and we're going to go Super Logger because most of the time this is the name of the folder that the plugin's in. So we're just going to go ahead and do a find all, and you will see that there's a few little places like this, like the description and stuff, that aren't right, but for the most part, we can just go ahead and replace all for Super Logger. And now we've kind of gotten ourselves way on the way for making this plugin. So the next thing we want to do is go to the info.xml file, and it already says Super Logger plugin by Dan Hoover. We're going to go ahead and just jump straight to version 1.0.0, and today's date is October 28th, 2019. October 28th, 2019. Let's do it this way. And we'll say I've tested it through 5.0.5. And then let's see. So this line isn't going to be correct. So we're going to say this is a very intensive logging and debugging plugin. Okay. So at this point we have our plugin and we could actually install it. But what we want to do is we want to begin to go through and see what features we want it to have. And so let's just kind of poke around these files. So we have a README, that's fine, that can stay there. Files, nothing in there. There are some plugin hooks, and we're going to use this, so we're just going to go ahead and leave these alone for now. Right now we have this configure page, which we're going to use. Configure is what's going to be our control panel for the plugin. But the first thing, okay, so think about this. The first thing we want to do is get it to install properly. So forget the hooks for now, but we're going to make some tables and stuff like that in the database. And so, excuse me, what we're going to do is we're going to close this, and I'm going to open up all of the entire UserSpice project again. So now we have demo and super logger and all that stuff is here, but we have the whole rest of our project. So let's just say you know for a fact that you're going to want to create a table. Well, we do that a lot in the updates. So if you just come in here for find projects and do create table, and you can see in these updates, all right, here's where we created a table. Perfect. So we have an example of how to create a table in UserSpice. So let's go to our plugin installer, and this is going to make sense in 1 second. So we are not in the demo program, we're in super logger, and we're in the installer. So right here. Okay, so we're going to take this spot right here. Now, what we want to do is we want to make a few things in the database. The first thing we want is set in the settings table. We want to have a few options. Oops, I knew that was going to do that. And then we are also going to want to make a table of our logs. So let's talk about this. We want to call our table something that begins with PLG, because that just lets everybody know who's looking at it that this is a plugin. And then we're going to go SL for super logger. We could make it really longer than that, but and then we're going to say logs. So let's do this. Plugin super log or super logger logs. So we're going to paste this here, and we're going to create a table called plugin super logger logs. Again, it doesn't really matter what you call it, but what we want to do is we want it to have an ID. And so we are going to keep that there. And then we're also just going to go ahead and do this right here. Primary key auto. I think there's a space there. Increment. Like that. Does that look right? Let's look at that for a second. Let's go back to our, let's see here. Let's do auto increment. Finding project. Again, I'm not going to try to pretty this up for you. I'm going to let you guys see the entire process. That might be one word. I don't know. Let's look at that. Create table. So let's do, oh, it is underscore. So we can even just do this. We'll copy this snippet right here, and we're going to just go ahead and get that all in once. Unsigned means it can't be a negative number. Not null means it's required. Primary key means it's the primary key for the table. Auto increment means that we want it to go up automatically. So what do we want to store in this table? Well, we want to store the user ID, and we want to store the page name. We'll just call it page. We want, which I guess we could make this an int 11. We want to store the page name. We want to store a timestamp. So we'll just call it TS, and we'll call this timestamp. And we want to, let's do get data. We're going to add a comma here, and we want to add post data. And let's go ahead and let's put that timestamp at the end here. So get data, post data, and then timestamp. Now, what we want to do, we want these to be text because we have no idea how much information is going to be in there. So if you think about it, let's take a pause for a second. We are creating a table that is going to store the user ID of the person who visited the page they visited, anything that was in the URL, anything that was posted as a form, and the timestamp that they did this. So that looks about right. So now the question we have is, what do we want to do globally? Like what settings do we want to allow people to change? Well, the first thing I would think about is, do we want to allow this to log logged out users. So we're going to come in here and we're going to do another search, and we're just going to look for alter table. Now, it's perfectly fine to store this. In fact, we'll actually find one settings. It's actually perfectly fine to store these things in the UserSpice settings table. And so we're going to come up here and we're going to alter the settings table, and we're going to add a column called PL or PLG, so we know it's a plugin, SL for superlogger, and then we're going to say guest. So are we going to log the guest? And so we're going to say default 0. So we're saying that by default we are not going to install, or we're not going to log guests. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to say, do we want to log forms, which is going to be this get and post. So do we want to log this stuff or not? Do we just want to track what pages they visit? And I guess the next thing we want to know is, do we want to allow them to opt out? So do we want to allow users to opt out of this logging? And the final thing that we want to know is, do we want to allow them to delete data? And so to take a step back again, we are making some general settings for the plugin. Now we could store this in its own table, but we're going to use the settings table because it'll just save us one query, and we're already making a lot of queries by all of this stuff that we're doing. So we want to know, do we want to track people who aren't signed in? Do we want to save any get and post data that is submitted on the page? Do we want to allow users to opt out? And then do we want to allow users to delete their data? And so the main reason why I'm doing these couple here is because I want to mess around with some of the plugin hooks. And I guess what we'll do is we're going to do one more, and we're going to call this one join warn. And so basically this is going to ask, do we want to warn people that we do this kind of logging when they join the project? So, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to save this, and now we're going to go to the plugin manager, and we're going to see that our plugin has already showed up with the default little icon here. So it's not installed. We're going to install it, and now let's go ahead and enable it. So now if we go to the database, so you can see that right now all of these things have been added to the settings table. You can see we're on the settings table, plugin guest, the forms, all of that stuff, those columns were added successfully. And then we can come down here to plugin logs, and you can see that that was done successfully. So we can zoom back out to 100%. So that's awesome. So right now we have done our install to the point of creating our tables, and fantastic. So we have our database set up, and right now what we're going to do is we're going to get to work on building our plugin. And so maybe the first thing we'll do, since it shouldn't be too hard, is we are going to do our form, and I'm going to make this very, very simple. So we're going to, I'm getting these so I can remember the column names, because I did use some goofy column names. So we're going to go to configure.php, which again I said is our page for making a control panel. So we already kind of have a little form here, but what we're going to do is we are going to make our form. So let's go ahead and get rid of this button here. Actually, we're going to get rid of these two lines. So what we want to do is we want to make some select boxes. And so we're going to say select, I can type, and we're going to give it a class of form control. And I'm going to leave these up here just so I have the names of these things. So we're going to give this one a name of this, whatever it is. Okay. And then we're going to give it a label while we're at it. Let's give it a div. Let's give it a form group. Div class equals form group. And then we're going to give it a label. And then we're going to just say track guests like this. And then we're going to stick this input in here. And we're going to keep this super simple. So we are going to say input, or we're going to give it an option. And we're going to say 0 is no and 1 is yes. And then we're just going to write a little bit of PHP in here, and we're going to say if settings, and then we're going to say this. Equals, and we'll put 0 there by default, and we're going to say echo selected equals selected like that, and we're going to put our semicolon. And so basically what we've done here is we're saying that in the event that the setting equals either 0 or 1, then we're going to pre-select this option. So let's take a look at what we're doing in case you're a little lost. We're going to come to the control panel for that plugin, and oops, got an error, unexpected end of file. So let's look at what we got there. So we forgot this right there. And so we're going to come back here, we're going to refresh. Fantastic. So this is really wide, but right now that option is 0, so it came down and selected no by default. And so let's do this. That's going to be kind of goofy. So let's make this column, since we're not going to have much in the way of options, let's make this 6 and then small or offset small 3. And this is just a very simple way to make this a little narrower. There we go. I don't love it, but it'll work for what we're doing now. So we have that, so we can go ahead and copy this div, and we basically want to do this for all of the options. Okay, so option 1 was that one. So now we're going to say for this, we're going to change the name, and we're going to change this, and we're going to change this. And then we're going to say save form data, get, and post. So do we want to save that form data? The next one is OptOut. And we're going to do this. Oh, no, wrong one. Going to do, nope. Did I mess up? Save form data, track guest. There we go. So this one is OptOut. This is OptOut, and this is OptOut, and then we're going to say allow users to opt out, and then the next one we're going to do is delete data. So boom, boom, boom. Allow users, keep it capitalized, users to delete their tracking data. Probably should capitalize more or not capitalize. I'm very bad about being consistent with that stuff. So let's just make these all lowercase. There, fantastic. All right, so allow them to delete their tracking data, and the last thing is plugin SL join warn. So right here, and then we're going to say warn new users of tracking. And then now we can delete this one because it's not important. And then let's go to input, submit, and we're going to say save settings. I do like those to be capital. and we want to give that a class of button primary. How's that sound? Okay, so let's take a look at our form and see if it works. So fantastic, we have all the options, and what we're going to do is we are going to come up here to the so if we pass the token check already, if everything's good, so right here we can do our form thing. So we've already checked if not empty post. We've already checked. Oh, so that's right. There is a by default this thing is looking for a this thing to be called plugin superlogger, the submit button. So we're gonna just go ahead and call it that. That's not really that important, but we're gonna do it anyway. So now what we want to do is we want to say fields. I cannot type today. Equals array, and we want to save all these settings. And so let's do this. Let's just go ahead and delete all these. Fantastic. Okay, which I should have done this at the beginning, so I'm going to do home. And okay, so we have each of those as a as part of an array, and now we're gonna just go ahead and do this. Do input get, oops, and what we can do input and we're basically just building out the form array, and we'll copy these. So this is all pretty straightforward, UserSpice. We're just building a simple control panel, and we just want to save these settings. Fantastic. So what we're going to do now is we are going to db update, and we're going to update the users or the settings table, and we are going to update row 1 because there's only one row in the settings table, and fields, and then we are going to redirect to, let's look at what page we're at here. If we view this, we are on this, so let's grab this part. We want to redirect to that, and we want to say and or equals settings updated. So now we should have a control panel that will allow us to change all these settings, and we'll know that they're right because if we change them all to yes, then we will see that oh, we got one messed up there. Let's look at that. So plug SL dat. What's going on at that one? Let's look here. So should that have been join? Oh, join Warren. There we are. Got it. Okay. So now you guys saw that, I'm sure, as I was typing it. But we're going to refresh the page. We're going to set all these to yes. And we're going to save the page. And we'll see that they are all still yes. So if I refresh this, that means that they are all saving. And we're going to come back and we're going to put them all to no. Oop, let's change that one to no and save the settings and keep refreshing. So that is working. So before we get too much into actually making all these settings do anything, let's go ahead and write our most complicated logic. So because of all these options, we're going to make the function to do this a little bit more complicated than it probably would be if I was just writing a straight up logger. It's definitely going to be more complicated. So let's start with just getting this working as far as collecting everything, and then we'll figure out how to not collect everything we want. So if we come in here, you'll see that we have a functions. Let's think. So we have a couple different things that we could do here. We could say we have access to the header, which is probably where we want to call any function that we want. But let's go ahead and write our function itself in the functions folder, or in the functions file. So this will not work if the plugin is disabled, which is good, because that means that if we disable the plugin, we're not going to be logging everybody. So what we want to do is we want to write a function, and let's call it plugin super. Let's do it this way. Plugin super logger, like this. And we are going to say that we want global user and settings. So we want global access to the user and settings table. So, or variables. So let's just go ahead and say that if let's try this. If not user is logged in, then what we want to do is we want to do this. We want to say user equals new user, like this. And then we want to say user data ID equals 0. And so basically what we want to do is we want to be able to record that as 0, and UserSpice will know what to do with that. So let's make this real simple. We also want here, I think we already have access to get and post. We'll find out. So what we want to do is we want to say get data equals, no, let's do this. For each get as key and value. And so what we want to do is we want to grab anything that is in the URL. And what we want to do is we want to create a variable outside of that loop called getData equals, we'll call it an empty array. So what we want to do is for each getData, everything that's in the URL, we want to say that getData key equals input sanitize v. And what this is going to do is this is going to prevent somebody from going in there and putting something malicious in the data trying to get us to store it in the database. And so we're going to do the same thing with post, except we're going to do something a little bit different with post. So we're going to call this one post data. And this is all going to make sense in a second. And then we're going to say post. And then what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're not storing passwords in here. So what we're going to say is if k, and so basically what you think about, like when you have a form, the key is the name of the form element, and the v is what they actually submitted. So what we want to say is if k not equals password and k not equals password confirm, then go ahead and store this information. And the reason why I'm doing that is in the join form, if you were to come in here to the views, users and views, and you look at the thing called join, if you scroll way down here, you can see that the name of that form input is password. Yeah, you got password, and then the other one should be, oh, it's confirm. Okay, so we want to make sure. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to block out confirm and password confirm. I don't think that's going to be a problem, so let's do this too. And we just want to do whatever we can to not store people's passwords in plain text in this plugin. So, fantastic. Now, let's go ahead and do a test on this. And the way we can do the test is to dump get data and dump post data. So we're going to dump everything in the URL. We're going to dump everything that we submitted. And the perfect place to test that is actually on this control panel here. So we have the name of the function right here. And so we're going to grab that, and we're just going to call that function right up here. Let's see here. Let's call it at the top. And then we're just going to, yeah, we'll just call it, I'm debating where I want to call it. Let's call it right here. So we're going to see what happens when we view that page right now. So you can see that what it's done is it's breaking down the views up at the top. And there's nothing submitted in post. So if we submit that, we're probably still not going to be able to see the post because of this redirect. So what we'll do is we're going to call that here, and then we're going to tell it to die. So this should allow us to see the post data that we just submitted. If I hit this, yep, see, you're getting our token and you're getting all of this information, including what button they hit and all that. So that's doing exactly what we wanted to do at that point. So great, our function is allowing us to see that. So all we want to do right now is start storing that. And so we're going to bust through this real quick. And so what we want to do is we want to make a set of we also need global database because we need to be able to query the database. So we want to say fields equals array, and we want to save, we want to look at that table on install. So we want the user ID, the page, the get data, and post data. So we're going to come here and we're going to say user ID. Let's add one more here. We have current page. I think that's it. Let's do a search for that real quick. Find in project. Hope you guys are sticking with me because I'm just kind of blasting through this thing. So current page. Yep, so that's the variable right there. So what we want to do, we want to store this data, and so user ID is user data ID. So if the user is not logged in, it's going to give it a user ID of 0. If they are logged in, then it's going to give us their real user ID. And then what we want to do is we want to do page, and then you already have access to this variable called current page, and then we want to do get data equals the variable we just made called get data, and then we want to do post data equals the thing we just did called post data, and then we're going to do timestamp, and then we're going to do date, and then YMDHIS. Fantastic. So we'll keep that comma there, and then we're going to say db insert, and then the name of the table where all that stuff is stored is called plugin SL logs. And so plugin SL logs, and we want to insert the fields. So I have no idea if that's going to work, but we're going to try to dump db error string, and that will tell us if there's an error. And if all is working, then every time we visit this configure page, we should be getting that data. So let's go ahead and stick the function name somewhere on that page. We're just going to stick it right up here. And now that should log this page every single time we visit it. So let's see what happens. Let's refresh the page. Okay, undefined offset DB, so get data cannot be null. So let's look at what we got. So we have our functions, get data. Oh, okay. So it doesn't like that. So that was actually kind of dumb of me to make this thing be not null. I don't really care if it's null, so what we're going to do is we're going to just delete these things here, and then we are going to drop that table and we're going to put it back in. So we're going to go to the database, and we are on the database 5, and we're going to just go ahead and drop this table, and then we're going to uninstall and reinstall the plugin. And you will find yourself doing this a bunch. I am in the wrong one, so we're in 5, and I'm going to go to my plugin manager, which is here, and add-ons, all plugins. We are going to disable. Oops, nope, we're going to disable, uninstall, install, reactivate, and that should bring us that table back. If we come in here, we have this one now, and now we should be able to visit that page. All right, there was an error. So what is our error in our query? So I think I know what it is, but I haven't tested the fix. We don't really want this to be an array when we stick it in the database. So what we're going to do is we're going to do get data equals JSON. I do this in so many different languages, and it's different in every language. JSON encode get data, and we're going to do the same thing down here for post. Man, I cannot type today. So what we want to do is we want to turn this into a JSON string, and we're going to put this right here, and we're going to say post. So the question is, will it log? Okay, so we have no errors. Let's see what the database looks like. So if I come here to the, let's see, 5 and plugin logs, fantastic. So we were actually able to get this data here, and you can see, let's look here, stretch this out a little bit. You can see that we're getting the form data saved, and in this way we stole everything that we got from the URL. So that is great. We are one line of code from being able to log every single page. So if all you care about is logging one single page, all you have to do is take this thing here that you get, this plugin super logger, and we're going to actually delete it from here. Let's delete this, and then you want to put it in the header. And so if you go to the super login plugin, you can stick it right in header.php, boom, and you have a working plugin. And you will see that as I browse around UserSpice, in fact, we'll go ahead and do it. I'm going to go to the dashboard, I'm going to go to the tools, I'm going to go to the backup, I'm going to go to the home page, and now when I come to the database and I refresh it, that basically all of that stuff was logged. And you can see that when I went to the backup page, it just saw that as admin.php, but because we saved this thing, it was able to grab that we were actually on the backup view. And so very, very cool. And in fact, what we'll do is we'll come back here, we'll log out. So all right, now we have an issue. So line 8 says creating default object with empty value. So let's look at that. I'm guessing that's the new user line that I did. So let's do this. Oh, you know what? Because I didn't make a new user. Or I didn't make a new user data. Let's do this. I'll tell you what. Let's do this. If I do, instead of creating a whole object, let's do user ID equals 0, and then we're gonna say else user ID equals user data. That gets us out of creating the objects for it and just any kind of conflicts. I don't want to mess up anything with UserSpice itself, so then the only thing we're going to do is we're just going to change this here. So now, even though I'm logged out, this should work. So I'm logged out. I'm going to refresh the page a couple times. Then I'm going to log in as admin and password. And we should see we submitted something there. So now we should be able to go to the logs and look at them, and you should even see where we submitted the form. Let's see here, post data, user agreement acknowledged, login. Oh yeah, right there. So you can see that it saved the username, but it did not save the password when we logged in. So I mean, we're done as far as getting the logging part to work. So everything else from this point on is giving ourselves options. So I hope you're learning something. I hope you're having some fun with this as we work through this process. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do some hooking. We're going to do some plugin hooks, and there's a couple different ways to do them, but we're going to do this first of all in the context of designing our own plugin, which is the middle of the video series that we're in. And then additionally, I will show you another way that you can do that. So what is a plugin hook? A plugin hook allows your plugin to inject some code into various places that people would commonly want to inject code in UserSpice. And so in this situation, like I'm looking at the account page, I might want to put a button here. I might want to put some extra information here or whatever. And so your plugins have the ability to do that. And if your plugin is enabled and all the settings are right, then that stuff will show up here. And if not, then it just will look like it was never here. So the way to get an idea of what you can do with these things is to just Google UserSpice plugin hooks, and you'll be taken right to the plugin hooks page. And the thing you'll most care about is this chart right here. And this is the video that I made a year ago and never actually finished the end of it. But you have this chart here, and this chart tells you on these different pages where you can stick code. So we were looking at account.php, and you can put something pre at the top of the page, or you can put something in the body position, which in this situation is below the gravatar, and bottom is the bottom right. So let me bring up that page again. So this would be bottom or body, and this would be bottom. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at that real quick. So we're going to come back to our code for our plugin, and you'll see that during install there is some examples of plugin hooks. So when you look at these options and you say, all right, do we want to allow them to opt out? So in order to do that, we need to store whether or not they've opted out somewhere, and the best place to do that is actually in the users table. So we're going to add another, I hate when it does that. We're going to add another column to the users table. So we're going to alter table users, and we're going to say plugin SL opt out. Okay, so that is going to store whether or not this particular user has opted out of logging. And so let's think of how we would want to do that. So we would want something in the body position on account.php to give them the option to opt out. So we have these hooks files here, and we're going to just take any one of these and we're just going to keep copying it. So I'm going to delete these other three because we don't really need them. But we're just going to take one of them as an example. And we are going to take this file and we're going to call it account body. So we're going to rename it, And the reason why I do this is it's account.php, and we're putting this in the body position. So account body. And then back to our install file, what we want to do is we want to enable this, and we want to say on account.php, in the body position, we want to load the file hooks and then account body.php. So it's very straightforward. And while we're here, we'll look at the other one. So we want this would allow them to opt out and possibly clear their data. And then the second thing is whether or not we want to warn them when they're joining that we log data. And this is primarily just so we can use the plugin hooks a little bit more. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to look at the page. I'm going to go to UserSpice plugin hooks. UserSpice, where is it at? UserSpice plugin hooks. Go to the page and let's look at join.php because it's going to have some more options. So join.php allows us to put things pre, post, body, form, bottom. So I'm going to assume body is also another good place to put it for join.php. So how about maybe bottom? Bottom doesn't sound too bad. Let's put it at the bottom. So if we come here and we go to this one, we're going to say that on join.php, oops. What happened there? Okay, oh, now I see what I did. So on join.php, we want to put something in the bottom position, and it's going to be called hooks join bottom. Now you can reuse these names. Like if you need to put the same code in 10 places, you don't need to make a separate file for this, but we're doing it because the code will be different. So we're going to duplicate this and we're going to make one called join bottom. Now the first thing we want to do is we're going to just say, we're going to put an H1 here. This is join bottom. And then we're going to, over here, we're going to put an H1 and we're just going to put button or something like that. And so we're going to make sure that this stuff is actually saving. So we're going to go back to UserSpice and we're going to go to the plugins. And because we made those changes after we installed, we need to come back here and we need to uninstall and reinstall. In fact, I just noticed one thing that we'll clean up while we're here. This says configure button. And so you can come to info.xml and change this to say superlogger. And so now when I refresh this page, that says superlogger, which is a lot more useful. So we're going to come to the superlogger and we are going to disable and uninstall and reinstall and activate. And now when we go to the user page, we have that button here. And if I were to log out and try to register, you would see it's kind of off the page. I think it's just this template. I don't like that though. Let's move that. So let's put that in the body. Let's change that to body. That is going to be very template specific where that's going to go. So we're going to call it joinbody.php and we're going to in the installer and we're going to change this to body. Okay, so that looks good. So we'll go through that process one more time, and this is why we check it out. We're going to log in. And we're going to go to the plugin manager and disable, uninstall, install, activate, log out, join. That's great. That's perfectly fine. That's a good place to put a warning. Okay, so now we can go ahead and write our little plugin hooks. So I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head if this thing has access to the settings by default. So what we're going to do is we are going to, let's find the install program here. We want to say like the join warn. Let's go ahead and just have it do a var dump there for a second. So we're going to just say PHP dump settings. All right, now let's reload that page and see if that's going to be a problem. Yep, so undefined variable settings. So what we want to do is type in global settings. And now let's refresh that page. Great. Okay, so what we're going to say now is if settings join warn equals 1, then we want to let's say we'll close the PHP tags. Man, my typing is horrific today. We're gonna say h3 this site records your I don't know, your actions. If you do not like that, please do not join. Okay, and then what we could say, here's an option. Okay, here's a great option. So we could say that by default. Let's do this. Let's say let's do this. We'll make it a little simpler. So we're going to just say end. Let's say settings. Plugin OptOut equals 0. Then we're going to say if you don't like that, then don't join. And then we'll just copy this down here and we're going to say, we're going to say if it equals 1, you can opt out in your or on your account page. Okay, fantastic. And then let's do one more of those. Let's say, again, this is not the neatest PHP, I'm just getting it done. You could say if, let's look at this other one, if delete data, let's try this. If settings warn, let's do this, if there. And we'll say you can delete your data So what we did there is we said, you know, if we're warning people, then, and we don't give them the option to opt out, then tell them suck it up. If we do give them the option to opt out, then we tell them that, and then we also tell them whether or not they can delete their data, only if they can delete their data. There's no sense telling them they can't delete their data. So right now, none of that should show up here. It still says this is join bottom, and that is because of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up UserSpice in an incognito window. And we're going to go incognito, and we're going to say localhost 5, and we're going to log in as admin. Okay, so fantastic. We're going to snap this over here. We're going to snap this over here, and we're going to refresh the page. And right now you see nothing. If you go to SuperLogger and we tell them that we want to warn them, we'll save it. And it's going to say, oh, dang, Eddings. That's fantastic. I'm sure you guys saw that. Settings right here. Oh, there's 3 T's. Man, I'm killing it today. Fantastic. All right, let's refresh the page. Okay, the site records your actions. If you don't like that, do not join. Great. So now we're going to say that we're going to allow them to opt out. So it's going to change the message. You can opt out on your account page. And then we're going to say, are we going to allow them to delete, allow users to delete their tracking? Now, you can also delete your data on the account page. Now, that probably doesn't need to be H3. So let's just go ahead and let's do H3. And then we're just going to change that with P. And we're going to find all, replace all. Save that one more time. Take a look at that. That's plenty good. Okay, so again, that's about as good as my CSS usually gets. All right, so let's look at a couple more options. The first thing I was thinking is that we might as well go ahead and store the IP address of the person who made this request, and I'm thinking that I can do that just by putting IP here. And so what we want to do is on the installer, we want to add an alter table right here, and we're going to alter table this, and we're going to add column IP, and we're going to make that a varchar. Just do 100, and we're not gonna have a default right there, and so we'll do our uninstall thing one more time, and let's go over to this one. We're gonna go to all plugins, disable, uninstall. Okay, and now we should have that column in the database. So when we come to our code, we can come in here, and I think this is going to work. There's a chance that, not there. There's a chance that we might not have access to the IP, but I think we will. So we'll go to functions, and all we want to do is add the IP here. And again, if you didn't notice that up front, I added IP here globally, because that is a variable that's available all throughout UserSpice. So what we want to do is load another page, and we're going to load a page, and then let's go to the database, which should be available here. Let's see. So we're going to go to number 5 and the plugin logs, and that last one. Okay, so there's no IP being in there, so it must not have the IP at that point. So what we want to do is come down here, get rid of this, and type in IP equals I actually don't remember the IP command. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a search of the project and do IP equals IP check. That's it. So we're going to come back to our function and put that right here. And now when we visit another page, I'm going to close this window. When we visit another page, I'll log in. That should be enough to trigger one in here. Oh, you know, we might be over 25. Yep. So actually, I think it was already. It's debatable. Either way, it doesn't really hurt to have that there. But so this is the IP address. If we were on a real website, you would see an actual IP address there. But we are storing the IP address now. So there's a couple of other settings that we threw in there, and the first thing had to do with opting out. And so let me close some of this stuff here. So during the install, we added a column to the settings that allowed them to opt out. And then we also added a column to users that allowed them to opt out. So let's start working through some of that logic. So the first thing is, what we want to do is right on this part, we're checking to see if they're logged in. And so we have the thing of here, do we want to track guests? So what we're going to do is we're going to say if settings plugin guest equals 1. So in other words, if we do want to track guests, then we're going to give that guest a user ID of 0. Else, we're going to return false. And what that's going to do is that's just going to exit out of this function. And so right here, fantastic. So that's going to return false. So now, let's say that they are logged in. Right now, we're just going and grabbing their user ID. So what we want to do at this point is we want to say if, wrong place. If settings, and then we're going to say allow, basically where we allow them to opt out, equals 1. So if they're allowed to opt out and user data, let's double check that column name, user data opt out equals 1, then do something. We're going to say else, do something else. So if they've opted out, I'm going to explain this for a second. So if the settings say that they're allowed to opt out, which is this one, and the user has opted out, then we're going to return false, which basically means we're not going to do any more logging. Otherwise, we're going to set their user ID. So basically, there's a couple different ways that this function would exit out. If you've opted out of logging, or if you are a guest and we've opted out of tracking guests, then none of this stuff down here is even going to get executed. So that takes care of that option. So it's basically what we need at this point is the ability for them to opt out, and we need the ability for them to clear their logs. So that's going to happen over here in these hooks. We have this account body. So now what we want to do is we want to say, I don't think anybody's realistically ever going to want to opt back into data collection. So I think what we can do is come here to this, and I think we have to do the global settings again. Oh, it's not there. Okay, global settings. I think we have to do that. So we're going to say, if we're allowing opt-out and they have not opted out, then we're going to go ahead and put, let's just say, opt out. We're just going to write some text here. Out. And then we're going to come in here with PHP else. And then you're out. Okay, so let's just do that for a second. So let's come here to the account page. So we have an unexpected end of file. So let's see, that's got to be a if settings this, else this. I don't see it off the top of my head. Let me control X this. And let's refresh that page. Oh, functions. Okay, I was not looking at the right place. So must have messed up a bracket here. Okay, so let's track this down here. So if users logged in, else. Okay, so that's the problem here. This needs another bracket here. Let's tab this in. There, that makes more sense. Okay, so let's go back to the account page. Okay, undefined variable user, so they don't have access to user. That's not a problem. We'll come here to the account thing, and we're going to do comma user. Refresh the page. Great. Okay, so right now they would, because I haven't opted out, they would have the ability to opt out. Great, so that logic is all working. Now the other question that we have for them is, do they want to clear their data? So what we're going to do is, let's do a query here. So let's say, so do we want to allow them to clear the data? Let's do two things. We're going to also do DB. So we're going to take this and we're going to say logging data equals DB query select ID from, and then we want the name of the table that we created to store all this data. My table names are usually way shorter than what I do for plugins, but I like to do longer table names for plugins because it's less likely of a conflict and it's really obvious that they're all sticking together. So, okay, so we're going to select this where user ID, man, my typing is terrible. Okay, and then we're going to say user data ID. And then we're going to just do count. So essentially what this query is doing is finding out, do they have any data to delete? Because there's no reason offering them to delete data if you don't have any on them. So what we're going to say is if, let's take this for a second. If settings plugin delete data equals 1 and logging data is greater than 0, then we're going to go ahead and make a form. And what we're going to say in that form is this. We're going to make we're going to both make the form and process the form right in here. So, excuse me, we're going to say form, and we're not going to give it any kind of action. And we're going to just put an input, type is submit, name is delete my logging data, and we're going to say delete my data, and we're going to give it a class equals button danger. Let's just say delete my logging data. That might be a little long, but let's take a look at that real quick. So those options might not be in place. Okay, they are. Delete my logging data. Perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to process that right here, because the only way we want this form to process is in this instance. So we're going to say if right here, and we'll close PHP down here. If not empty, $_post, delete my logging data. Then we're going to say db query delete from, and then this is the name of the table, where user ID equals question mark user data ID. And then we're going to refresh the page. And basically that is going to delete all their data, and it's going to refresh the page. So if they did not opt out of data collection, then they're immediately going to have more data because they requested this page. But it will have deleted everything up to that point. So the next thing we want to do is basically the same exact thing for opting out. So we already have that logic up here, and we just basically want to take all of this down to the form. So we're going to grab this, fantastic, and then we're going to leave that. Okay, and we're going to say we're going to call this opt out. Opt out logging data. And then we're going to call this opt out of logging. And we're going to say, I'm going to call that button primary. Now, the one thing about this, I mean, this is for the deep logging. This is not going to prevent all the logging that UserSpice does. This is more just because we can do this. Anyway, so what we're going to say is we're going to say db query update. Let's see here. Let's do this. Let's do db update user data ID. Oop, this is the parentheses right there. And then the column that we are updating is this. Nope. It's this. Just, I guess it is the same. And we're just going to pass an array right there. And then we're going to say you have opted out of deep logging. I'm going to say that. All right, so let's take a look and see how much that works. Opt out of logging. So maybe let's put a break here. Not pretty, but it works. So we're going to say delete my, let's look at here in the logs, and we have a whole bunch of them for user ID 1. So I'm going to delete those logs. Data deleted. And so everything for user ID 1 is gone except for that last one that I just made. And so now we're going to say opt out. They've opted out. So now I should be able to refresh this page a bunch of times. And there are no more logs except for that one where they opted out right here. And then now if I come in here and delete the data one last time, the data is gone and there shouldn't be anything with user 1 at all. So, I mean, job well done. We could do some cleanup with that styling, but not bad at all. Okay, so what we're going to do, we are going to just make a couple of options on this control panel here to show some of these logs. And let's see here. Let's come to the control panel, And first thing we want to do, I opted myself back into data collection just because I want to continually be generating more data for the plugin. So if we come here to configure, the first thing we want to do is we have that column and row thing here. So we want to make a new row, class equals row, and div call 12. And then what we want to do is say, we'll do an h3, and then we're just going to say logging data. Now the first thing we want to do is make a table. And so we're going to do table, and we're going to do class equals table striped. Then we're going to make a head, and we're going to do a row. And we're going to say th user, say page, we'll say IP, get, post. That looks good. And then what we're going to do, we're going to give this table an ID equals paginate. And that will be for when we apply the data tables to it. And then we're going to give it a t-body. And we're going to say, we're going to jump into some PHP. And we're going to say, let's do this. Yeah. All right. Let's say for each data as D, and we haven't even made our query for the data, but that's fine. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a row, and for each of the columns or each of these rows of data that we come back with, we are going to want to do these cells. And so the first cell will be echo user, the user ID, because that's the column in the database. And then the next one will be PHP, let's just do this. That is the column for the page. And then these next ones will actually all be the same. So this is IP, this is get data, and this is post data. Alright, and just for the heck of it, at this point we will make a query just right here and say data equals db query select star from the name of that table that I always forget is this one, and we're going to tell it to order by ID descending limit, let's say 5,000. Okay, so we are going to query all the information in reverse order on that table and make sure that the table seems to work. And there is no data. Now I don't remember clearing out that table. We definitely have data. Select, oh, I did not call for results. So we're going to get results. Save the page. Great. Alright, so now we have the table, which is going to kind of auto format. Okay, the unknown is really guessed. So the get info, alright, great. So now what we want to do is we're going to grab the data table stuff so that we can sort all that. So the best way to do that is to search for $, like that, and that will get us our data tables information. So I'm going to come here, paste this down the bottom, and we're basically grabbing the data tables JavaScript and the information right here. So I'm going to get rid of this one because we don't need to save it. And let's say by default we're going to, let's just leave it like that. That's fine. So now I come here, we have this, and this stuff should be sortable. So we can sort whether it has post or not. The only thing I think that we're missing is the CSS, and so maybe that'll be on this page. Let's see. We'll find that later. I won't bore you guys in the video. The only thing we're missing are the little up and down arrows, which is not really that big of a deal. But you can search it, and you can just type in join, and you're only going to get the data for join.php, which is fantastic. So we have the ability to sort. Now, what I'm thinking we can do is maybe get a little bit fancier and start taking these things from the URL. So let's take a look at this real quick. Right now, we have this being viewed as admin.php view equals plugins config. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a form, and let's do that right. Let's see, where did I do that query at? Okay, so we're going to come in here, we're going to put a little bit of PHP. We're going to make a form. Oop, nope, not in PHP. We're going to make a form right here. And we are going to do something a little different. We're going to put an action in there. And we're going to make the method as get. Now, what we could do here is we can give some options to search. And so we're not going to get too over the top complicated on it. So we're going to say, let's do this. We are going to, let's do this. All right, let's open up some PHP. Users equals db query select username ID username from users results. Okay, and so we'll start with that one just to give you guys an idea what I'm doing here. So I'm going to make a select option, and I'm going to give it, I'm not going to give it a class. I'm going to say user. I'm going to say users, and then I'm going to give it an option. And the first one I'm going to do is 0 and put guests. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say, I'm going to open up my PHP tags, and I'm going to say for each users as you. And I'm going to say option, and we're going to get the user ID, and then we're going to say UID. So in fact, that's probably actually a way better way to, I don't even need to search the out the username. So I'm just going to say select ID. Now I just need to put a submit button, and I'm going to say input type is submit, and we're going to say submit user, and we're going to give it a value of go. Now, if we look at that thing and everything is right, we didn't make any kind of big fancy thing there, but we have guests, sample user, and the admin. And so these are going to line up with what we have here. So now you'll notice that if I hit go, it's going to add that. It should have added that. So it did users. Let's see here. Submit users go. Now I was under the impression that the action would also, all right, so let's do this. I got an idea, haha. We're going to put some hidden variables in there. Again, this is just for admins, so we should be fine to do this. So we're going to say input, type hidden, and we're going to give it a name of view, and we're going to give it a value of plugins config, and we're basically going to do the same thing for the next one. And what this is going to do is when we submit this is going to stick all the right information in the URL for UserSpice to know what in the world we're doing here. So this will make sense in a second. I'm going to get rid of all this. So what we're going to do is when we submit this, ideally all it's going to do is add the user ID that we want to search for in the URL. So let's try that one more time. So we are going to search for the sample user, which is user 2. And now you'll see that we have the view is right, the plugin is right, we have users equals 2, and then we have our submit button. So that is great. So what we can do is come down here and we can modify that query for that. So let's try this. So if is set, no, let's do this. Users equals input get users, and then we're going to say if users not equals this, then we are going to search for that data, and we're going to say, then we'll say else. Okay, so we're going to say, let's do this. If users is that, and then end is numeric. We want to make sure we're actually only searching for a number there. So perfect. So we're going to say we are only going to look for the logs where user goodness ID equals question mark. So what we're going to say is if that is in the URL bar, we're only going to search for that particular user. Otherwise, we're going to get all the data. And then we're going to close our PHP tags here. Yeah, we should do that. We should not do this. Okay. So now what we have is refresh the page, and we are only going to search for the admin. And you'll see that the only ones that came back are the admin. If we do sample user, he shouldn't have any data because we've never logged in with sample user. And guests is going to give us everything else. So that works. Let's do this one more time for pages. Do the same exact thing. So instead of going to the database and finding all the pages we have, what if we come in here and do this? What if we say pages equals, and then we're going to do this. What in the world am I doing? DB query let's say, let's do this. Select distinct pages. Or is it page? What is the column name? Select distinct page from the logs, and then we're going to call results. So this is only going to try to give us back pages that are actually in the database. And let's say order by page. So we're going to get them in alphabetical order. So basically we can copy this whole form and paste it again. And this doesn't really have to be separate, but for the heck of it, we're going to say pages. And then we're going to just say pages. Pages, and what we want to do is we're actually fine doing pages page. And then same thing right here. Oops, that was already there. Okay, and we're gonna say submit page. Not that it really matters. Okay, and now let's just, we're gonna say else if. And then we're going to say else if, same thing here. If pages is not blank, and well, it wouldn't be as numeric, so we're actually good there. And we're going to select star from, let's take this one here. So we're going to select where page equals pages. So we're going to, that should be pretty dang close. All right, so we got problem here. Trying to get property page. So let's look here. So this is called page here. And let's see what we did in our original query. Select distinct page. Let's do a, hey, this is why we're doing it this way. This video may not be for everyone. I completely get that. But, you know, sometimes you make errors there. And so we're going to check, see what's wrong with that query. Nothing sticks out on the top of my head. I'm not getting any error there. So what's probably happening is in my for each loop, for each page. Oh, that's the problem. I did for each as u, so we're just going to change this to u. Normally I would do page there, but that's fine. Great. So we have account.php. These are the pages that have been logged. I can go to join, and I'm only going to get the people who've been logged on join. If I do account, I'm only going to get the people who've been logged on account. And so now we are getting some good data. I'm not going to prettify that. I could, but it's fine. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm just going to call it filter. And you'll notice that if there's nothing submitted right there, which I guess what we could do one more form and just say clear all. So let's do right here. And we're going to get rid of the select option. And we're just going to put clear filters. And if that works, submit clear, then you should get all the data. So fantastic. So we've got 3 pages of data here, and it's all working, it's all sorting, it's all filtering, and So, I didn't spend a ton of time making everything pretty or anything like that, but that is the basics of how to do a plugin. We've got our interactions on the account page. I can come in here, I can delete all my data, and then when I come back here, there should probably only be that one for me. Oh, nope, that's, I guess, if I go to the admin, I've deleted pretty much all my data up to that point. In fact, I can see the last thing I did was deleted the data. And yeah, it works. It's there's still a lot to learn. There's still a lot more the plugins can do, but this just gives you an idea of what's possible. So now that you've learned a little bit about what plugin hooks can do, one of the things that may help you out is that you actually don't need to design an entire plugin just to use them. So if you go to SpiceShaker and you type in hooker, then you can install hooker. And we'll come in here and install it, activate it. You can go to the control panel for it. And basically what you can do, there's nothing, there aren't any hook files. I guess there is a sample hook file. That's perfect. So let's just say that you want to make your own hooks, but don't feel like you need to design an entire plugin. What you could do is you could come in here to the hooker plugin and go to hooks. And let's just make a new file here. We're going to duplicate this call, and we're going to call it Dan hook. And we're going to edit that, and we're going to just come right here and just say hook. Okay, like that. So what you can basically do is use the hooker plugin. We're going to refresh the page, and you're going to say, all right, I want that at account.php. I want it in position, we're going to say bottom, and I'm going to use Dan hook, and I'm going to add it. Well, then all of a sudden, when you go to your thing, this is the Dan hook. So I didn't need to make a whole plugin just to get that functionality, and I can come in here again, come to add-ons. That's weird. I thought that would have a thing there. So I could go, oh, there it is. I can go to add-ons, and I can do the same thing. I can say account.php, and I want to add it to the body, and we're going to do Dan hook again, and I'm going to add it, and now you're going to see it over there on the left as well. And so I can say, I don't really want it in the other position anymore, so I can come here and I can delete the bottom one, and now when I come and refresh the page, like that one's gone, this one's here. And so you can make these hooks without actually having to design a whole plugin, and you can share them and all that kind of stuff, and just tell people, hey, this is the page, this is the position, and this is the hook. And now, so on account.php, we're going to add this body hook, add it, and I don't even know what that is. So this lists the permissions that I have. So anyway, that's just a little quick tip that you don't necessarily have to design an entire plugin to use plugin hooks. So if you made it with me this far in the video, you are awesome. We're going to clean up just a couple little things, maybe add one more option. Let's look here at these forms. Right now we have this as a div 12. Let's close that out here. What we're going to do is we're going to do a new div equals row, and then we're going to make each one of these forms a class of, let's do 3. So div call 3. I think that'll be fine. I mean, again, this is not, it's not even an official plugin. I'm just kind of doing it. What did I do there? We're going to just close out that div. And then we're going to do the same thing here. And then we're going to close out that div. And then we're going to do the same thing here. And we're probably already closing out that div. Nope. So we're going to do it here. And then we're going to open up a new, we're going to close the row. And then we're going to open up a new div row. and then a new column 12. And so if I guessed right on all those divs, then we should be using 3 out of the 4 columns for the tables, or for these forms, and our table should still be fine. Yep, so we have 1, 2, 3 clear filters, and that's fine. I guess I could make these 4. I was gonna put a delete. Let's do that. Let's do a delete button to just clear out all the data. Let's see here. Div column 3. Let's do this. That look right? Okay, I'm going to copy that, and we're going to make this one post. And we're going to say submit delete logs, and we're going to say we're going to give that a class. And because we didn't use bootstrap ones on the other one, we're just going to do button danger. And let's try this. Let's just see if the button shows up. Okay, delete all logs. We're not going to, because this is just kind of a demo plugin, I'm not going to put a confirm there. So I'm just going to go ahead and let her rip. Okay, so we've cleaned that up a little bit. I'm not going to spend a lot of time building a bunch more features into this. I've already built more features than I normally would, but one thing that's probably super important to people if they make a plugin is getting that icon in there. And so if I come here to my code and go to user C plugins super logger, I can come in here and copy a clear PNG, and so I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to rename it as logo.png. And then now when I come to the plugin manager, all of a sudden I have my own little icon for my super logger. So that is the overall process for building a UserSpice plugin. It's not really that complicated once you understand what the things do. You know, you could come in here and you could, like, so we have this installer. You could come in and maybe delete that table in the event that you uninstall, like that, just depending on. I'm always a little hesitant to delete the data when I uninstall a plugin because you never know. Somebody might just be trying to update it and don't want to delete their data, but you could come in here and drop those tables and delete all that stuff when you uninstall. You could come in here to the info and put some more detailed information here. But for the most part, I mean, that's what it takes to do a plugin. Every once in a while, you want to run something when you're activating a plugin or deactivating a plugin or something like that. But for the most part, that's what it takes. So, hey, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you learned something from it.